The gentle hum of the police cruiser's engine filled the quiet night as Officer James Sullivan patrolled the streets of downtown Chicago. The clock on his dashboard showed 11:43 p.m., and the autumn wind rustled through the trees lining the empty streets. At 35, James had spent 12 years on the force, and he thought he had seen it all. But fate had other plans for him that night. The radio crackled to life, breaking the peaceful silence. Unit 247, we have a welfare check at Mountain View Apartments. Building C, neighbor reports unusual noise and children crying. Over. Copy that. Dispatch. I'm 3 minutes out, James responded, turning his cruiser toward the apartment complex. Something about this call felt different, stirring an unexpected feeling in his gut. Mountain View Apartments wasn't the nicest place in town. Paint peeled from the walls, and several windows were covered with cardboard instead of curtains. As James climbed the creaky stairs to the third floor, the sound of soft whimpering guided him to apartment 3C. He knocked on the door, announcing himself clearly. Chicago Police Department. Is everything okay in there? The whimpering stopped, followed by hushed whispers and tiny footsteps. After a moment, the door opened just a crack, revealing a pair of worried brown eyes belonging to a young girl who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Hi there, James said softly, kneeling to her eye level. I'm Officer Sullivan, but you can call me James. Can you tell me what's going on? The door opened a bit wider, and James's heart sank at what he saw. 4 young girls, all in pajamas that had seen better days, huddled together in a living room lit by a single lamp. The oldest held a baby doll in one arm, while protectively embracing the youngest, who looked about 3. Mommy went to get medicine, the oldest girl explained, her voice barely above a whisper. She said she'd be back soon, but that was 3 days ago. James stepped inside, and the state of the apartment told its own story. Empty cupboards stood open, dishes were piled in the sink, and a calendar on the wall showed unpaid bills marked in red ink. A few scattered toys and a well-worn copy of Cinderella suggested the girls try to maintain some normalcy in their chaos. We've been taking care of each other, the second oldest said proudly, though her trembling lip betrayed her fear. Sarah helps us brush our teeth, and I make sandwiches when we have bread. James noticed how the older girls made sure their younger sisters had on warm socks, how they shared a single blanket, and how they kept their school books neatly stacked despite their surroundings. Their resilience touched something deep in his soul. As he called Child Protective Services and waited with the girls, James learned their names. Sarah, 8, Emma, 6, Lisa, 5, and little Maya, 3. They shared small details about their lives, their favorite colors, their dreams of having a pet dog, and how Sarah read bedtime stories every night. The girls huddled closer together when social services arrived, their eyes wide with fear of being separated. That's when James saw something in their faces that would change his life forever. A mix of hope and desperation, strength and vulnerability. In those faces, he saw not just victims of neglect, but 4 incredible children who deserved a chance at a better life. As he watched the social workers prepare to take them away, James made a decision that would reshape not only his future but theirs as well. He couldn't explain it, but something told him these girls were meant to be part of his life. Little did he know, this ordinary night shift would mark the beginning of an extraordinary journey that would span the next 20 years. The fluorescent lights of the police station buzzed overhead as James sat at his desk, unable to focus on his paperwork. His thoughts kept drifting back to the 4 sisters he had found last night. The image of their brave faces haunted him, especially how the oldest, Sarah, had tried to smile when the social workers took them away. You look like you've seen a ghost, Sullivan, Officer Martinez said, placing a cup of coffee on his desk. Those girls from last night still on your mind? James nodded, running his hands through his salt and pepper hair. They're going to separate them, Maria. 4 different foster homes. Can you imagine? Those girls are all they have in the world. And now, The social worker, Miss Thompson, had explained it matter-of-factly. It's nearly impossible to find a home willing to take 4 children at once. Her words had felt like a punch to his gut. The girls had already lost their mother to addiction. Now they would lose each other too. That evening, James walked into his modest 2-bedroom apartment and looked around. Sports memorabilia decorated the walls, and a stack of case files cluttered his coffee table. It wasn't much, but it was home. As he heated up a microwave dinner, Sarah's words echoed in his mind. Please don't let them split us up. He couldn't sleep that night. At 3 a.m., he found himself sitting at his kitchen table, surrounded by printouts about foster care requirements and adoption procedures. His calculator showed his savings account would be stretched thin, but it was possible. The spare bedroom could fit 2 bunk beds. He could sell his beloved 1967 Mustang. He'd been restoring it for years, but what was a car compared to 4 lives? The next morning, his colleagues stared in disbelief as he marched into the station and announced his plan. "You're going to what?" Sergeant Peterson exclaimed, coffee cup frozen halfway to his mouth. "Sullivan, have you lost your mind? You're single, you work crazy hours, and you've never even had a goldfish." "I know it sounds crazy," James admitted, "but you didn't see them together. They protect each other, love each other. They need each other. And maybe they need me too." His fellow officers exchanged concerned looks. Officer Martinez pulled him aside. "James, honey, your heart's in the right place. But this isn't like taking in a stray puppy. These are 4 children with serious trauma. They'll need therapy, new clothes, school supplies. Your life will never be the same." "Good," James replied firmly, "because their lives will never be the same either. But maybe we can build something new together." The next weeks passed in a blur of paperwork, home inspections, and parenting classes. James learned about trauma-informed care, attachment disorders, and the importance of routine. He worked overtime to save extra money and spent his days off transforming his apartment into a home for 5. The hardest part was waiting. Every night, he wondered how the girls were doing in temporary foster care. Were they scared? Did they think he had forgotten them? He sent them cards and small gifts through their social worker, promising he was working to bring them home. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Miss Thompson called with news that changed everything. "Congratulations, Officer Sullivan. You've been approved as a foster parent. The girls can move in this weekend." James sat down, overwhelmed with emotion, as he realized his life was about to change forever. There would be no going back, but looking at the 4 small toothbrushes he had already placed in his bathroom, he knew with absolute certainty that he was making the right choice. Sometimes the biggest decisions in life aren't decisions at all. They're simply answers to the heart's strongest calling. The first morning of their new life together started at 4 a.m. when little Maya woke up crying from a nightmare. James rushed to comfort her, only to find all 4 sisters already huddled together on one of the bottom bunks, Sarah gently stroking Maya's hair and humming a lullaby their grandmother used to sing. "It's okay," James said softly, kneeling beside the bed. "You're safe here." The girls looked at him with uncertain eyes, not quite believing that this new home was real. He didn't blame them. They had heard too many empty promises before. That first week felt like running a marathon while juggling plates. James had never imagined how complicated it would be to get 4 girls ready for school. There were shoes to tie, hair to brush, and breakfast to make. His first attempt at braiding Sarah's hair looked more like a tangled rope than the neat plaits she was used to. "Here, let me show you," Sarah offered patiently, demonstrating on Emma's hair. James watched in amazement as her small fingers worked quickly and confidently. That evening, he spent hours watching YouTube tutorials about hair braiding, determined to learn. The kitchen became ground zero for his steepest learning curve. His regular dinner of microwaved meals wouldn't cut it anymore. After Lisa wrinkled her nose at his 3rd failed attempt at spaghetti, James swallowed his pride and called his mother. "Ma, I need help," he admitted. How do you make vegetables taste good enough that kids will actually eat them? His mother laughed warmly and spent the next hour teaching him her secrets. Soon, the apartment filled with the smell of home-cooked meals, though not without some memorable disasters, like the time he set off the smoke alarm trying to make pancakes, sending all 4 girls running to the balcony in their pajamas. Balancing his police work with parenting proved challenging. His supervisor, understanding the situation, switched him to day shifts, but emergencies still came up. The first time, he had to call his neighbor Mrs. Chen to watch the girls during an unexpected late shift. He worried they would feel abandoned. Instead, they came home from school the next day excited about learning to make dumplings. Nighttime brought its own challenges. Emma struggled with bedwetting, ashamed and afraid James would be angry. But he never was. He simply helped her change the sheets, reminding her that healing takes time. Lisa had trouble sleeping alone, often sneaking into her sister's beds. James solved this by creating a reading nook with soft pillows and fairy lights where they could all gather before bedtime. The hardest moments came when the girls tested his commitment. 6-year-old Emma had a meltdown in the grocery store, screaming that she wanted her real dad. 3-year-old Maya refused to speak for 2 days after a playground mother called James their new daddy. Lisa hoarded food under her bed, afraid there wouldn't be enough tomorrow. Each challenge taught James something new about patience and love. He learned to kneel down to their eye level when they were upset, to listen more than he spoke, and to give extra hugs on hard days. He kept their therapy appointments religiously, even when it meant rearranging his work schedule. Progress came in small moments. Maya's first spontaneous hug after he bandaged her scraped knee. Lisa sharing her hidden snacks with her sisters. Emma asking him to check for monsters under her bed instead of calling for Sarah, and Sarah finally letting her guard down enough to ask for help with her math homework. One evening, as James sat surrounded by scattered homework papers, half-folded laundry, and the remains of a messy but happy dinner, Officer Martinez stopped by to check on them. "Still think I'm crazy?" James asked, wiping spaghetti sauce from Maya's chin. Martinez looked around at the chaos, the wall now decorated with children's artwork, the toy box overflowing with donated dolls and books, and 4 little girls who, despite their ongoing struggles, were beginning to show signs of feeling at home. "Crazy? Maybe," she smiled. "But sometimes the craziest decisions turn out to be the wisest ones of all." Spring arrived, bringing with it the first anniversary of the girls' arrival in James's life. The small apartment that had once felt too big for just him now burst with life, love, and the happy chaos of 4 growing girls. James had spent months searching for a bigger place, and finally found a modest 3-bedroom house with a small backyard, perfect for the family they were becoming. Moving day brought excitement mixed with anxiety. The girls watched nervously as their belongings were packed into boxes. Sarah, now 9, kept checking and rechecking that nothing was left behind. James noticed how tightly Maya, the youngest, clutched her stuffed elephant, the first gift he had given her. "Are you sure we're all going together?" Emma whispered to Sarah, her voice trembling slightly. James overheard and gathered all 4 girls in a group hug. "Always together," he promised. "This is our next adventure as a family." The smile that spread across Emma's face warmed his heart. She was finally beginning to believe in forever. The new house became their canvas for creating memories. James let each girl choose the color for their bedroom walls. Lisa and Maya shared the pink room, while Sarah and Emma picked sky blue for theirs. The girls watched in amazement as James and his fellow officers spent a weekend painting and assembling furniture. Officer Martinez brought over homemade curtains, and Sergeant Peterson helped build a treehouse in the backyard. James started new traditions to help the girls feel secure. Every Sunday morning became pancake breakfast time, where they would take turns suggesting fun shapes for the pancakes. James's attempts at making butterfly-shaped pancakes often looked more like blobs, but the girls' laughter made his culinary disasters worthwhile. Their first summer together brought camping trips in the state park. James taught them how to set up tents, make s'mores, and identify constellations. One night, as they sat around the campfire, Lisa asked the question that had been on all their minds. "Can we call you Dad?" James's heart swelled. "Only if you want to," he replied softly. "You can call me whatever makes you comfortable." That night, Maya fell asleep in his arms, whispering "Good night, Daddy" for the first time. The formal adoption process began, filling their days with home visits and paperwork. James worked extra shifts to cover the legal fees, determined to make it official. The girls helped by selling lemonade on weekends, proudly announcing to customers that the money was for their forever family fund. One ordinary Tuesday turned extraordinary when they all dressed up and went to the courthouse. The girls wore matching blue dresses that Mrs. Chen had helped them pick out. James wore his police dress uniform, polished to perfection. As the judge made the adoption official, Sarah reached for James's hand, and the younger girls huddled close. Today, the judge announced with a warm smile, "You're legally becoming what you've already been in your hearts, a family." That evening, they celebrated with a special dinner where each girl got to choose one dish, resulting in an unusual but perfect meal of spaghetti, chocolate chip pancakes, chicken nuggets, and strawberry ice cream. James surprised them with a new family photo album, already filled with pictures of their journey together. As they sat looking through the photos, 8-year-old Emma pointed to a picture from their first week together. "Remember how scared we were?" she asked. "We thought you might send us back if we weren't perfect." James hugged her close. "Nobody's perfect, sweetheart. We're learning together. That's what families do." Later that night, as James tucked Maya into bed, she asked him to check under the bed for monsters, not because she was scared anymore, but because it had become their special ritual. Sarah helped Lisa with her reading homework without being asked, and Emma left a handmade card on James's pillow that read, "Best Dad Ever," in wobbly letters. Standing in the hallway, looking at his sleeping daughters, James realized that trust wasn't built in grand gestures, but in these small, everyday moments. In keeping promises, in showing up, in being there through nightmares and celebrations alike. They were no longer just survivors of a tragic situation. They were a family, bound together by choice, love, and the unwavering belief in each other. The peaceful morning routine James had perfected over the years shattered the day 14-year-old Sarah slammed her bedroom door and declared she wasn't going to school. The calendar on the kitchen wall marked the beginning of their most challenging chapter yet, the teenage years. "You're not my real father." Sarah's words echoed through the house during one particularly heated argument about a school dance. James stood in the hallway, his heart aching, but remembered what their family therapist had said about teenage outbursts. He took a deep breath and waited until Sarah's angry sobs quieted. "You're right," he said softly through the door. "I didn't give you life, but I choose you every single day, and I'll keep choosing you, even on the days when you're angry with me." That evening, Sarah crept downstairs and curled up next to him on the couch, just like she used to when she was smaller. Emma, now 12, struggled with different demons. She started asking questions about their birth mother, wondering if she had her smile or her love for art. James helped her create a memory box where she could keep old photos and write down questions. "It's okay to love her and be angry at her at the same time," he explained. "Your heart is big enough for all those feelings." The 11-year-old Lisa turned her energy to sports, joining every team she could find. James suspected it was her way of belonging somewhere, of proving her worth. He never missed a game, even when it meant trading shifts at work. His fellow officers became regular fixtures in the bleachers, cheering loudly for Sullivan's girl. 9-year-old Maya, usually the sunny one, started having anxiety about being away from her sisters. The school counselor suggested it stemmed from their early separation fears. James worked with her teachers to ensure she could see her sisters during lunch breaks, and gradually her confidence grew. The house adapted to their changing needs. The pink bedroom walls were repainted with posters of pop stars and soccer teams. The treehouse became a teenage hideout where the girls would spend hours talking about school, friends, and their dreams. James made sure to stock the kitchen with extra snacks. Teenagers, he discovered, were always hungry. One evening, he overheard Sarah comforting Emma after her first heartbreak. "Boys come and go," she said wisely, "but family is forever. Look at Dad. He chose us when nobody else would. That's real love." James faced his own learning curve. He learned to navigate conversations about makeup and dating with grace, even if inside he felt completely lost. Officer Martinez's teenage daughter became an unofficial consultant, helping him understand the mysterious world of teen fashion and social media. When Lisa came home crying because someone at school had made fun of her for being adopted, her sisters rallied around her instantly. Sarah shared stories of their early days together, reminding Lisa how brave she had always been. Emma drew a family portrait that made them all laugh. James with his attempted pancake creations, Maya with her ever-present stuffed elephant, and all of them together under one roof. The most touching moment came during a parent-teacher conference. James sat nervously as Sarah's English teacher pulled out an essay she had written titled "My Hero." The teacher's eyes were misty as she read Sarah's words about a police officer who had given 4 scared little girls a chance at happiness. That night, as James did his usual rounds checking on his sleeping daughters, he noticed small changes in their rooms. Sarah's angry music had been replaced by softer tunes. Emma's art now covered the walls, bright paintings of their family adventures. Lisa's sports medals hung proudly next to her first-place science fair ribbon. Maya had finally moved her stuffed elephant from her bed to a special shelf, growing up but keeping the memories close. Standing in the hallway, James realized that navigating the teenage years wasn't about avoiding storms. It was about teaching his girls to dance in the rain. Every slammed door, every tear, every moment of rebellion was part of their journey. They weren't just growing up. They were growing stronger together. The kitchen table disappeared under a sea of college brochures, scholarship applications, and SAT prep books. Sarah, now 17, sat surrounded by highlighters and sticky notes, her dream of becoming a doctor growing closer with each passing day. James watched her from the doorway, remembering the quiet 8-year-old who used to bandage her sister's scraped knees with paper towels. "Dad, listen to this," Sarah called excitedly, waving a letter. "I got accepted into the summer medical program at the university." Her eyes sparkled with the same determination he'd seen when she first announced her dream of healing others. James hugged her tightly, even as his mind raced through calculations about program costs. That evening, after the girls went to bed, James sat at his desk, looking at his beloved classic car in the driveway. The Mustang had been his pride and joy for years, but Sarah's future was worth more than any car. The next day, he quietly put it up for sale. Emma, 15 now, had inherited her father's sense of justice. She spent hours watching courtroom dramas and debugging her sister's problems with the logic of a future lawyer. When she won the state debate championship, James beamed with pride from the audience, still wearing his police uniform after rushing straight from his shift. "You know what, Dad?" Emma said on the drive home. "I want to be like you, helping people who need someone to stand up for them." She didn't notice the tears in his eyes as he gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. Lisa, 14, surprised everyone by teaching herself coding from online videos. Her room became a workshop of half-built robots and computer parts. When she needed special tools for her engineering club project, James picked up weekend security shifts without hesitation. The extra hours were worth it when Lisa's solar-powered water purifier won first place at the National Science Fair. 12-year-old Maya discovered her voice through art. Her paintings captured their family's journey. 4 small figures growing taller beside a steadfast guardian in blue. When her art teacher suggested a prestigious summer art camp, James sold his fishing boat, the one he'd dreamed of teaching his grandchildren to fish from. The girls noticed their father's sacrifices, though he tried to hide them. They saw how he kept his old uniforms patched and pressed, how he brown-bagged his lunch every day, how he never bought anything new for himself. But James considered every sacrifice a privilege. His rewards came in different forms: Sarah's acceptance letters to pre-med programs, Emma's passionate speeches at mock trials, Lisa's ingenious inventions, and Maya's beautiful artwork. One day, Officer Martinez found James working his third extra shift that week. "Sullivan," she said gently, "you're going to wear yourself out." James smiled tiredly. "Did you see Sarah's scholarship applications? And Emma's looking at pre-law programs. Lisa needs a new laptop for her coding projects, and Maya's art supplies." His voice filled with pride, even as exhaustion showed on his face. But his dedication paid off. Sarah received early acceptance to medical school with a partial scholarship. Emma's debate skills earned her attention from top law schools. Lisa's robotics project caught the eye of engineering programs, and Maya's portfolio impressed art school admissions officers. The proudest moment came when Sarah was named valedictorian of her high school class. Standing at the podium in her graduation gown, she spoke words that made James's sacrifices feel weightless. Success isn't just about natural talent or luck. Sometimes, it's about having someone who believes in you so completely that they'll move mountains to help you achieve your dreams. My sisters and I found that person in a police officer who chose to become our father. He taught us that family isn't about sharing blood. It's about sharing dreams, supporting each other, and loving unconditionally. In the audience, James sat surrounded by his other 3 daughters, all of them wiping tears as their sister spoke. His old Mustang was gone, his savings depleted, but watching his daughters chase their dreams was worth more than all the classic cars in the world. That night, as James reviewed bills and scholarship applications at his worn desk, he found a handmade card signed by all 4 girls. "Thank you for giving up everything, so we could have everything that matters." He smiled, knowing that every sacrifice had led to this moment. Seeing his daughters rise above their difficult beginnings to reach for the stars. 20 years had passed since that life-changing night at Mountain View Apartments. Sarah, now a resident doctor at Chicago General Hospital, called an urgent family meeting, but insisted it had to be on a day when their father was working his shift. "I found something in Dad's old papers," Sarah explained to her sisters as they gathered in her apartment. She spread out faded photographs on her coffee table, pictures of a gleaming blue 1967 Mustang. This was Dad's pride and joy. Remember how he used to talk about restoring it? Emma, now a promising junior attorney, picked up one of the photos. "I remember when it disappeared, right around the time I needed that expensive debate team trip to nationals." Her voice caught as realization dawned. Lisa, who had just finished her engineering degree, nodded slowly. "And my first professional-grade laptop for coding." She traced the car's outline in the photograph with her finger. Maya, fresh out of art school, looked up from her sketchbook. The summer art program, too. He never said anything, but now it all makes sense. The sisters sat in thoughtful silence, remembering all the times their father had somehow made the impossible possible. The college application fees, the extra tutoring sessions, the special programs. Everything they had needed to pursue their dreams. "I found the sales receipt," Sarah continued, pulling out a yellowed paper. "He sold it for less than half its value because he needed the money quickly. It was the same day my medical school deposit was due." Emma stood up, pacing the room with the determined energy she usually reserved for the courtroom. "We have to do something. We're all working now. Together, we could." "Already ahead of you," Lisa interrupted, pulling out her laptop. "I've been tracking classic car sales and restoration specialists. Look what I found." She turned the screen to show a nearly identical Mustang listed for sale just 2 states away. Maida's artistic eye noticed the differences immediately. The color's not quite right, and those aren't the original seats, but her fingers flew across her sketchpad, making notes about the details that would need changing. The sisters spent hours planning, each contributing their unique skills to the project. Sarah calculated their budget, factoring in their combined savings. Emma researched the legal aspects of purchasing and transferring ownership. Lisa created a spreadsheet to track every detail of the restoration process. Maya designed how the finished car should look, matching it perfectly to their father's old photographs. They worked in secret for months. Sarah picked up extra hospital shifts. Emma took on additional cases at her law firm. Lisa freelanced coding projects on weekends. Maya sold commissioned artwork online. Every spare dollar went into what they called Operation Mustang. The car itself needed extensive work. Lisa spent weekends at the restoration shop, ensuring every mechanical detail was perfect. Maya supervised the paint job, mixing colors until she achieved the exact shade of blue from the old photos. Emma handled all the paperwork, making sure everything was legally perfect. Sarah coordinated their efforts, keeping their father distracted with family dinners and impromptu visits whenever he seemed close to discovering their secret. There were close calls. Once, James almost caught them huddled over restoration photos at Sunday dinner. Another time, he questioned why they all seemed to be working such long hours. But the sisters had learned their deflection skills from the best. Their father himself, who had always managed to hide his own sacrifices behind a smile. The project became more than just restoring a car. It became their way of saying thank you for 20 years of selfless love. Each sister added personal touches. Sarah had the medical symbol subtly worked into the leather seats. Emma added a tiny scale of justice to the dashboard. Lisa installed modern electronics that looked vintage, and Maya hand-painted delicate pinstripes along the sides. As James's 55th birthday approached, they gathered one final time to review their plan. The restored Mustang gleamed in the workshop, every detail perfect, every line exactly as they remembered from their childhood. "Do you think he'll like it?" Maya asked, running her hand along the polished hood. Sarah smiled, remembering all the times their father had put their dreams ahead of his own. "He's going to love it," she said confidently. "Not because it's a perfect car, but because it shows him what he taught us. That family takes care of family, no matter what." The morning of James's 55th birthday dawned bright and clear. At the police station, he sat at his desk, reading birthday messages from his fellow officers. He smiled at the card his daughters had given him at breakfast, a simple "See you at lunch, Dad," written inside. After 20 years, quiet birthdays with his girls were all he needed. Around noon, Officer Martinez appeared at his desk with an unusually bright smile. "Sullivan, there's a situation in the parking lot that needs your attention." James grabbed his jacket, concerned, but Martinez just kept smiling mysteriously. As he stepped into the parking lot, James froze. There stood all four of his daughters, dressed in matching blue dresses reminiscent of their adoption day. Behind them, a crowd had gathered, fellow officers, old friends, and even Mrs. Chen from their first apartment building. "Dad," Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. 20 years ago, you gave 4 scared little girls a chance at a better life. You taught us that love isn't about blood. It's about choices. Every day, you chose us." Emma joined her sister. "You never told us about the sacrifices you made, the extra shifts, the simple meals, the old uniforms you kept patching up. But we noticed. We always noticed." Lisa stepped up next. "You sold your most precious possession to help us chase our dreams. You never complained, never made us feel guilty. You just smiled and said that watching us succeed was all the reward you needed." Maya, the youngest, completed the circle around their father. "But we wanted to show you that your sacrifices weren't just about us achieving our dreams. You taught us about love, responsibility, and giving. So now it's our turn." Together, they led James around the corner of the parking lot. There, gleaming in the sunlight, sat an exact replica of his 1967 Mustang. The same shade of blue, the same chrome trim, even the small dent in the hood that he'd always meant to fix but never had time for. James stood speechless, his hand reaching out to touch the familiar curves of the car. His trained eye caught all the personal touches, the medical symbol in the leather, the scales of justice on the dashboard, the modern technology hidden behind vintage facades, and the delicate pinstriping that could only have come from Maya's artistic hand. "This isn't just a car, Dad," Sarah explained, her voice thick with emotion. "We've also established the Sullivan Family Scholarship Fund. Every year, it will help children in foster care who dream of college. Your sacrifice for us will keep giving to others." The gathered crowd burst into applause as James pulled all 4 daughters into a tight embrace. Tough police officers wiped away tears, and Mrs. Chen dabbed at her eyes with her apron. Even Sergeant Peterson, known for his stoic demeanor, had to turn away to compose himself. "But how?" James finally managed to ask, still stunned by the magnitude of their gift. The sisters exchanged proud smiles. "Sarah took extra hospital shifts," Emma explained. "I worked overtime at the law firm. Lisa did freelance engineering projects, and Maya sold commissioned artwork. We wanted to show you that everything you taught us about hard work and dedication stuck with us." "The car is actually better than your original," Lisa added enthusiastically. "I upgraded the engine while keeping the vintage look. It's more fuel efficient now, but still has that classic rumble you loved." Maya touched the carefully painted pinstripes. "I matched the color from your old photos. Remember how you used to wash and wax it every Sunday? Now you can start that tradition again." James ran his hand along the hood, memories flooding back of teaching the girls to change oil, explaining engine parts to curious young minds, planning road trips they never got to take because college funds were more important. "Want to take it for a spin, Dad?" Sarah held out the keys, a replica of the original leather keychain attached. "We got the whole afternoon off, and I remember you promising to teach us to drive stick shift someday." Through tears of joy, James saw not just the restored car, but the restored dreams of a younger man who had once thought he had to choose between his passion and his children's future. His daughters had given him back both, wrapped in a bow of love and gratitude that made every sacrifice worthwhile. The story of Officer James Sullivan and his 4 daughters spread quickly through the community. Local news reporters gathered at the police station, eager to share this heartwarming tale of love and dedication. James, still humble after all these years, shifted uncomfortably in front of the cameras. "I'm no hero," he insisted, adjusting his police badge. "I just did what any decent person would do." His daughters, standing proudly beside him, exchanged knowing smiles. They knew better. Not everyone would have chosen to take in 4 scared little girls and give them a lifetime of love and opportunity. Sarah, now a respected pediatrician, spoke to the reporters about their journey. "Our father taught us that family isn't about matching DNA. It's about matching hearts. He showed us that love is in action, not just a feeling. Every time he worked an extra shift to pay for our school activities, every time he learned to do something new just to make us happy, he was choosing to love us." The interview aired on the evening news, and something unexpected happened. The station's phone lines lit up with calls from people wanting to help other children in the foster care system. James's fellow officers, inspired by his example, started volunteering at local children's homes. 2 of them even began the process of becoming foster parents themselves. Emma, putting her legal skills to good use, worked with the police department to create a program connecting officers with children in crisis. "Sometimes all it takes is one person believing in you," she explained during a training session. "Our father taught us that everyone deserves a chance at happiness." Lisa used her engineering knowledge to design a website for the Sullivan Family Scholarship Fund. The site shared stories of foster children who dreamed of college education, helping to raise additional funds. "Technology can build bridges," she said, "but it's people who have to choose to cross them." Maya's artwork depicting their family's journey was displayed in the city hall. Her paintings showed the transformation from 4 frightened girls to successful young women, all anchored by the steady presence of their father in his police uniform. The exhibition inspired several local businesses to create internship programs specifically for foster youth. The impact rippled outward. Other police departments across the country reached out to learn about James's experience. He found himself speaking at conferences, sharing his story with fellow officers. "The uniform doesn't make us heroes," he would say. "It's what we choose to do while wearing it that matters." One morning, James arrived at the station to find a young officer waiting for him. "Sir," the rookie said nervously, "I was in foster care too. Hearing your story on the news, it gave me hope. Now I want to do the same for someone else." The Sullivan Family Scholarship Fund grew beyond their expectations. Within its first year, it helped 15 foster children attend college. Each recipient received not just financial support, but mentoring from one of the Sullivan sisters. "We're paying forward what our father taught us," Sarah explained during the first scholarship award ceremony. During family dinners, now held in Sarah's spacious home, they often reflected on their journey. The dining room walls displayed photographs marking their milestones, graduation ceremonies, career achievements, and countless moments of everyday joy. The latest addition was a picture of James teaching his first grandchild, Emma's little girl, how to check the oil in the restored Mustang. "Did you ever imagine this 20 years ago?" Officer Martinez asked James during one such gathering. She had watched the girls grow up and was now a cherished family friend. James looked around at his daughters, Sarah discussing medical research with a colleague, Emma preparing a case for court, Lisa showing her latest invention to wide-eyed children, and Maya painting portraits of foster families. He watched them interact with scholarship recipients they mentored, sharing their own stories of hope and transformation. "No," he answered honestly, his voice full of pride. "I just wanted to give 4 little girls a chance at happiness. They gave me so much more. They showed me that love multiplies. It grows stronger when you share it, and it has the power to change not just one family, but an entire community." The legacy of their story continues to inspire others. In police stations, courtrooms, hospitals, and art galleries, the Sullivan family's journey reminds people that sometimes the biggest acts of heroism aren't about saving the world. They're about saving one heart at a time and letting that love ripple outward to touch countless other lives.